Hi, welcome back to Christine's Home Affairs. I have a really quick project for you guys today. It's going to be a leather or a vinyl zippered pouch. It's unlined, but I got a new toy a couple of weeks ago that I've been playing with. It's a laser machine and it also cuts metal and wood and stuff like that. I'll show it to you in a video very soon. I've just got to figure out how to use the machine. But I've been playing. So this is my char logo, the Christine's Home Affairs Australia, and that's been etched into the leather. And I'm also playing around with making my own leather labels or vinyl labels. So I thought I'd make this pouch because I've had so many leather pieces given to me, probably a pile about this big. I showed it to you around Christmas time. And I had the idea to make lots of these little vinyl pouches. I think they'll sell really well in the shop. They're super quick to make. That's what we're doing now. Let's get to it. Okay, we need very little for this project. What I have here are 2 pieces of leather. You can use vinyl if you want to, and you could just make this with fabric instead if you wanted to as well. It just won't be lined. So 2 pieces of leather that I've got here. They measure 8.5 inches in width by 5 inches in height, which is about 22 by 13 centimetres. I have an extra strip of vinyl here, which I'm going to use as my zipper tab. So you want this piece here to be at least as wide as the zipper tape that you have. So whether you're using a number 5 continuous zip or whether you're using a regular dress zip, you can see the difference in sizing there. You would just trim that down, but it needs to be 1.25 inches or 3.5 centimetres going the other way. If you just work on a square piece, 3.5 centimetres by 3.5 centimetres, if it's bigger, you can always trim it down. So there are 2 ways we can install the zip today. I'm going to be using what a lot of people know as the Butler Method, which is where you turn the sides over at the top end here. But you can put a tab in at both ends if you want to. I'm going to show you how to do the Butler Method at one end and a tab on the other. So the first thing we're going to do is cut this down to the size of my zipper tape. So that's already the right width. So I'm going to fold one edge into the centre, but not quite all the way to the centre. So this side is only about 1/4 inch. And then what I'm going to do is neaten up the edge here. And I'm going to place this folded edge over the top here. And we're just going to have the raw edge of the leather folded over on the other side. So basically all you're doing is folding one edge over and then placing the end of your zip over the top, folding that in half, making sure that you have this folded edge lined up with this raw edge. You can just pop a clip in the end here, but you know me, I love my double-sided tape. And if I can have the opportunity to use it, I will. I'll fold that up to be in line with the leather on the other side. So the top side will be folded, the bottom side won't be. And being leather or vinyl, it's not going to be an issue on the other side. It's not going to fray on you. We can go to the machine and sew straight across there. If you're going to be using leather or vinyl products, you need to use a Teflon or a vinyl foot so that your fabric can move freely underneath. Now I have trust issues, so I'm going to stitch over this again. So there we go, that was really easy. If you wanted to use a regular zip, I would cut off this metal stopper here and then attach this to the end of the zip there. What we need to do now is determine what our seam allowance is and whereabouts you are going to turn in the end of the zip. So I want my seam allowance to be about 3/8 of an inch or 1 centimetre. So on the right hand side of the front, I'm going to make a mark at 3/8 of an inch or 1 centimetre. And if this were a patterned piece of fabric, you would have the right sides along here, and then you need to just flip this piece around like that. And we'll mark that same 3/4 inch just there. So when we put the zip in place, we'll be stopping right there, and this will be our seam allowance. On this side here, we'll do the same. And we can make a mark on the zipper tape. On both sides. So when we have our zip placed on the fabric, that mark we made is going to be the end point of our zipper tape. So where you've got your mark just there, fold your zipper teeth under, until it looks like this. So once again, on that white line, I'm going to fold that across, and the bottom of the zipper teeth here will line up with that white line. So what you can do is take this to the machine and stitch it down. But I actually prefer to do it whilst I'm sewing my bags together. So what we're going to do is run some double-sided tape along here. Remove the paper, and we can place the zip faced down over our fabric. So we want this edge here lined up with the top edge, and we're going to line up the side of this tab with that mark that we have underneath, and then line your zip up until you get to the mark that you've made on your zipper tape. I'll open the zipper pull just to get that out of the way, and then what I'm going to do is fold the zipper teeth back, and I'll be looking at that white marking that I've got, and that's where the fold is. But with this piece of zipper tape, it actually opens out to the end of the leather. So I'm just going to clip that together just there. And when I take this to the machine, I'm going to sew over this just to secure it, and then I'll stitch the zip all the way down. Now I'm not using a special needle whenever I sew vinyl or leather. I'm usually just using a universal 90 or size 14 needle. I've got my zipper foot on. This is a really narrow foot for putting zips in. And the first thing I'm going to do is just secure that fold. So I've stitched that in place so that it doesn't move. Now this isn't something that I do normally when I sew, but just for the video today, I've secured that. It just helps you keep everything in place whilst you go and sew the rest of the zipper tape down. So we've got one side of the zip installed. Now you may notice that I actually came down on this side of the zip rather than sewing from here. It's actually much easier to sew at this end and come down here, and then you don't have to worry about any lumps and bumps when you get to the end. And on this side we're going to do exactly the same thing. I'm going to line up the folded edge of the tab with that marking that I've made, secure that in place, and that should have my seam allowance in line as well. And we'll just open that up. And where our marking is on this side, we'll do the same thing. We're just going to fold that up out of the way, pop a clip to hold that in place, then double check that everything lines up. Once it's sewn, and we can take this to the machine and we'll do the same. So the first thing I'll do is secure that top end, and then I'm going to sew from here down to the end. So that's secured in place, and I'm going to start at the tab end again. And if you're happy with that, then we can top stitch. So I've put my vinyl foot back on. I'm going to fold that layer of fabric over the seam, and then we can top stitch. I've increased my stitch length to 4 millimeters. When I put the zip in, I was using 3. And on the other side we'll do the same. So there we have the zipper inserted with the Butler Method. At this end we've got a tab on this end. Now if you don't want to do that one, you can actually just put this tab at this end as well. So whatever you do here, you'll do exactly the same at this end. Just make sure you've got your slider on before you put your tabs on. Now one thing I do want to do is make this a curved bottom pouch, and the reason for that is that because it's leather, it's actually going to be much easier to get a nice finish on the bottom rather than having to try and poke out tight corners. So it doesn't matter what size curve you make. This is a 2-inch template, and all I'm going to do is just line that up on the edge. So you can use a cotton reel, whatever you like. As long as you do the same size curve on all 4 corners. We're not going to cut that out just yet. We'll do that after we've sewn it. What we will cut off is the end of the zipper tape. Let's bring right sides together. We can line up the edges. So you want to line up the top edge where the folds are. That's more important than it is to line up the bottom. Any mistakes at the bottom can be hidden. Clip that together. And we'll line up this side as well. Again, lining up those folds. Now the most important thing to remember here is to make sure you've got your zip open. So you want to have it open at least halfway, otherwise we're not going to be able to turn this the right way out. What we're going to do now is sew from the top, and I'm going to backstitch this really well all the way down, and I'm going to be using the edge of my presser foot as my stitching guide. So I'll run the edge of my foot along the edge of the fabric. As I come around this curve here, the edge of my presser foot will also be running along the edge of the curve, and I'll continue on around that curve and straight up and backstitch really well at that top end as well. Now I've put my narrow presser foot on again, which is the zipper foot, because it's going to be really difficult using a regular sewing machine foot along the side of this bulk here, or at least it will be for some machines. When I said to you that I was going to be using my presser foot as my guide, I've changed my mind because this one is too difficult to put on my machine, so I'm actually just using the 1/4 inch line on my stitch plate as my stitching guide. So because I'm doing that, I just have to be mindful as I'm coming around this curve to try and keep the same distance away from that drawn line. When I'm coming up to this side, I need to make sure that I can keep the top edges lined up as well. And because I'm just using a regular sewing machine thread, I'm going to stitch this again. So we're actually finished now. We can trim this back. We can cut around the curve. And we can turn the bag the right way out. Open up the zip all the way. And once you've turned it out, you want to round off those corners nicely. And with this tab along here, you should be able to insert tweezers or a pokey thingy, just so that you can get that tab sitting nicely on that end. And there we go. I think I have a scrap piece of leather here. I can attach that to the zipper pull. And there we have a very simple little pouch. So what do you think? I think these are going to do really well in the shop. My price point I was thinking was probably about $10 or $15. The leather didn't cost me anything, so obviously I'm not going to charge for that. The only thing I've had to pay for is the zip. There was a little bit of time etching my logo into the leather, but in future I will probably actually attach a label to the leather instead. I haven't quite decided, but I do want to make a whole batch of these. I think they'll sell really well at $15, especially given that they're 100% leather. Now this is only a very thin leather that I was using, so you'd want to be mindful of that if you're going to be sewing something a little bit thicker. But look, you've seen me sewing vinyl pieces before, and the vinyl that I work with is quite often even thicker than this. So I think this is a really quick little project to make. I reckon it'll sell well, and I think it'll be a great one to have on your market stalls as well. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I shall catch you next time. Bye for now.